A day in the life of a perioperative nurse. So my mom is a perioperative registered nurse. But what exactly is that? Well, essentially, they are the nurses in the OR. They set up the OR for specific surgeries, assist the surgeons and the anesthesiologists during those surgeries, and then take everything down and start over again for the next one. In any given surgery, there are at least 3 nurses in the OR, a scrub nurse and 2 circulating nurses. It is the scrub nurse who is scrubbed in for the surgery and is physically a part of it by handing instruments to the surgeon and holding retractors when needed. The circulating nurses are the ones who set up the OR and take it down after, but during surgeries they are there if anything goes wrong. These nurses are also constantly counting and recounting all the instruments and supplies to ensure that nothing gets lost or even sealed inside the body. If something within the sterile field becomes compromised, then it is the responsibility of the circulating nurse to take it out and fix it. In order to be in this job, my mother had to go to school at the U of S to become a registered nurse. Then, after working and gaining some job experience, she decided to try something new, so she took the perioperative course. For this, she learned about the OR and all the different instruments they used in surgeries. She had to know what each one was called, what it was used for, and how to properly use it. So how is this job related to biology and specifically to our course? Basically, everything my mom does on a daily basis and everything she learned in her years of schooling have to do with biology. These nurses have to know about the human body, what organs do what, where they are located, what they look alike, etc. In the dissections we do in class, we have to find certain organs such as the heart, the stomach, the lungs, but in our dissections it isn't life or death situations. As a registered nurse, one must know a lot about human anatomy in order to assess a patient, but one of the most essential and important things that perioperative nurses have to know about and master is the concept of sterilization. This has to do with bacteria and how to avoid it and kill it. This is yet another subject that relates to the class since we learned a lot about bacteria, viruses, and prions. In a surgery, it is critical that everything in the sterile field stays sterile and clean. If it is not, then bacteria or any other harmful particles could get in the patient and infect them. So what do they do to ensure everything stays sterile? Every step these nurses take right from the time they arrive at the OR unit is to avoid spreading bacteria, viruses, and any other harmful prokaryotes or eukaryotes. Right from the time they arrive at the OR unit, they have to get changed and cover their hair and shoes. Bacteria from the outside world is all over our clothes and hair, and so they have to ensure these bacteria do not come with them into the OR theaters. But before they head into a surgery, they have a specific way they need to wash their hands and get dressed again, which my mom will demonstrate.
I won't do it when I start my shift. You have to do this at least once in a shift, and then after that there's this gel that we can put on. But the first time you come in, you got to dig everything out from under your nails and scrub it all away. And then I have to wash my hands in planes. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 for each finger.
Oh, okay.
You do each plane 10 times.
All the way up your arms like that too?
All the way past my elbow, yeah. So the inside of this is sterile, and then see the way it folds over. Now the edges is all sterile. So that towel is there for someone to dry their hands, and then you can put on the gown. Drying all the way up, and then you take the other side, dry all the way up so that one hand doesn't contaminate the other, and then there's the gown in here. And that's as much as I'm allowed to do myself. Somebody has to come behind me and tie everything up for me, because if you reach behind you, you're no longer sterile.
Then, once the surgery is over, the instruments as well as any sponges, blood that got suctioned, or anything else that was used in the surgery gets taken out of the OR theater and put in bins or in carts for the cleaning staff to come and collect. And then the theater is cleaned and prepared for the next surgery. Those were just the things that the people do every day to avoid and kill these harmful particles, but the hospital itself is set up in a way that is designed just for that reason. First of all, no one can enter the OR unit unless they know the code to the door, so no one can just walk in and contaminate everything. As seen in the map, all the hallways and OR theaters are centered around what they call the core. Essentially, how that unit is set up is that as you get closer and closer to the center, everything is cleaner and cleaner. The core is the cleanest place in that unit. That is where all the instruments, drugs, and anything else needed for surgery are put before surgeries once they've been properly cleaned and sealed. The core itself has its own elevator so that nothing in that room comes into contact with any outside contaminants. So the core, the cleanest, is in the middle. Then there are the ORs, which are attached to it, then the hallways attached to them. This is a good idea and all, but bacteria and other particles can still travel through the air and could infect the patients that way as well, couldn't they? And there's no way to avoid this, right? Wrong. Each OR has big doors that essentially seal the room off, and they all have negative pressure vacuums which pushes the air down and helps keep any bacteria to the ground during surgeries. Throughout my tour of the OR unit, my mom kept talking about the sterile field, and that made me wonder exactly what the sterile field consisted of. In general, they say everything that is blue is considered sterile, but there's more to it than that. The area of the patient that has been cleaned, the drapes surrounding this area, the front side of the gowns of anyone scrubbed in, including their hands, the instruments and the surface on which they sit, and the handles of the lights are all part of the sterile field. This means that the surgeon could touch any of these surfaces and still be considered sterile. If any of these surfaces were to be contaminated, then it would have to be removed and replaced. Another question I asked was roughly how many people are in an OR for any given surgery. The minimum is 5, not including the patient. There are the 3 nurses, the surgeon, and the anesthesiologist, but there can be any number of people. There can be multiple surgeons depending on the surgery, but there can also be residents working under the surgeons, or residents working under the anesthesiologist, and there can also be nurses in training working under the perioperative nurses. What is the expected salary of all these positions? In comparison to the other people working in the OR, perioperative nurses make a lot less. On average, a perioperative nurse makes between $54,000 to $80,000 a year. Surgeons can make anywhere between $90,000 to $350,000 a year, depending on what they specialize in. And an anesthesiologist can expect an annual income of about $200,000 a year, which again can vary depending on experience. Of all the new equipment and technology in the ORs, why is it so important that they be equipped with these cameras? Well, surgeons run into problems and complications during surgeries all the time, and sometimes they need to consult specialists in order to continue on, but oftentimes it takes anywhere near an hour for one to get to the hospital. This camera allows surgeons to send live video to other surgeons or specialists in such situations. This technology can help cut hours off of surgeries, which could save lives. Did you know that Canada is one of 58 countries to have universal health care? This means that the health and safety of everyone in this country is provided and paid for through our taxes. But just because free health care is provided, it does not mean that everyone has to accept it. Some people refuse blood transfusions and even surgeries to help save their life just because it is against their cultural beliefs. All in all, my mom's job is pretty important, and it just happens to be one that she loves. Thanks for listening.